This is deep stuff.
Deep. Deep is the word I was thinking too.
I also feel like it could be an upsetting topic for some people.
Hmm.
I think it's
Like,
quite an uncomfortable idea, like this
yeah,
idea that we are attached to the suffering that we
need
would
it.
insist we'd insist that we don't want it.
Well, I think it could also be liberating to kind of identify that there is a part of us that is still holding on to it for a reason, because it kind of contradicts the idea that we don't make sense or that,
Mm.
why we're just broken because we're not doing something that we want to do. It gives it a reason. Like there's a
Mhm.
part of us attached to it, you know?
I also want to add, it's okay to completely reject this idea. This isn't going to apply with all types of suffering in your
Mm,
life.
mm. Yes.
You might be going through a difficult thing and go, no way am I attached to this
Yeah.
or want this. And we're not saying that we're just attached to our suffering. And if you just let it go, you can be Zen like us with
I'm
no
not Zen.
suffering.
Please.
Neither, neither am I. Yet. I still believe it's possible. You don't without going up a mountain
Not until I'm
and
floating in
not
outer
coming back
space.
down.
Yeah. Well, what kinds, like when this topic came up and you were like, ooh, yeah, that, what
Mm.
part of your experience of suffering does this relate to for you?
Well, the reason I went, oh yeah, is I remember reading Eckhart Tolle's Power of Now. I think it's in there. Might be a New Earth. I can't remember. One of his books. He talks about people being attached to their suffering. And he said, if you look closely, you can see how we get attached to the story and attached to the suffering. Because when I first read it, I was like, no. And then when I paused and I looked for myself, there was something about it that felt true before I actually understood cognitively what that could be. Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
like a
Like there's
knowing.
just yeah, or a feeling of like something resonated within
Hmm.
that. I would imagine, for me anyway, that it comes down to identity and actually to take certain struggles, and I might want to use the word struggle over suffering. Maybe not, maybe interchangeably. Let's see. I mean, let's take okay, because you and I both recovered from an eating disorder, right?
Yeah.
There is the whole if not this, then what? If I'm not struggling with this, with food and with my body image, then what? And actually, what struggling with food and body image did for me was it gave me a route to salvation because it was like, I have to fix this problem. And when I fix this problem and I emerge the version of myself that I'm supposed to be, then I've arrived. Then I have become who I'm supposed to be. So the pursuit of that itself is incredibly meaningful, incredibly purposeful. When actually, as I'm sure you can probably see where I'm going with this, the recovery route was more about letting some of that, um, the fantasy go. So I think sometimes we might be in the idea of a self-sabotaging struggle that's actually trying to do something is because the struggle itself can bring meaning. And we think it means something about ourselves that if we overcome it,
Mm.
and I would never use the word overcoming. Wouldn't say I overcame an eating disorder because that just feels the language of that feels clunky, which is interesting because obviously Fairbairn's book is overcoming binge eating. For me, it wasn't an overcoming. It was more like a undercoming. And I don't fully know what that
Like a
means, but
dropping,
again, it just feels right.
like a
It's
shedding.
not it's not about like dominance and
Yeah.
battling. It's like a softening and releasing and acceptance and surrender and letting go, um,
Interesting.
and humility.
I mean, all of those things I agree with, but not in the same way. So you're saying that almost like your suffering through an eating disorder was like a hero's journey, like that there would always be this fantasy of a hero's journey in it.
Yeah. And I'm not
Um,
saying that that's the reason I developed an eating disorder. I just mean
right.
that's part of the attachment to it. And I'm not saying it's only letting go of this that then just fixed everything.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I do not have that. Um, but I have something else that I needed it for, but it's not that. But I that's an interesting thing to think about. Um, and also, did you then supplement it with a new hero's journey?
A new hero's journey. So I don't think it was a hero's journey. I think it wasn't because it was an illusion. The hero's journey really it ended up being that, but the attachment wasn't about. Hang on, let me think. It comes back to this idea, which we've spoken about in our previous podcast a long time ago, that it felt like. giving something up, to let go of the pursuit of this ideal version of myself, which was a big part of what exacerbated the eating disorder because it increased black and white thinking, it increased like morality and restriction and food rules and all of that kind of stuff that I kept trying to implement. This idea, I think that I knew the way out of suffering, and the way out of suffering was just more discipline, more this, more that. And that was where I think the attachment was, because the idea of that I could let go of this, that didn't seem the right way to get out of suffering. The way to get out of suffering was to
Conquer.
win.
Yeah.
Yeah, to conquer and to win. And actually, I think
Huh.
that to me this ties in with humility, which I love the concept of
Yeah.
humility,
So do
even if
I.
it might be a challenge for me, as one of my
Yeah.
therapists told me once. But
I think you've shared that story.
yeah, yeah, I definitely. It was a pretty significant moment.
I relate to this and I don't like the best self kind of thing, this and like foregoing that, but I don't think that I saw it as like a quest to conquer. I just wanted it to be true. I think that in my experience, the eating disorder was a buffer. It was like, I don't want to give that suffering up because that's the place where I get to suffer. Like, meaning I suffer in general. Like, I have, well, do we all? Like, I mean, like, I have big feelings a lot, so, or I just sometimes have low energy to be doing in the world. And it gave me the excuse kind of to be like, I can retreat, I can withdraw, I can be vulnerable, I can collapse. And their eating disorder was always an excuse for that. It always felt more justified, than
Hmm.
anything else. So to me, it was like I needed to have this thing that I could always go to as a cocoon. And to not have that felt raw. And to be, what would I do if I didn't have, what would I do? How would I suffer then?
Hmm.
Like, kind of,
Hmm.
you know,
Yeah,
what would
and I
justify
just
my suffering?
well, I can relate to that in terms of when I talk about the depression that I've experienced. When I've been in that depression, there's a part of me that, if I'm really honest in that moment, doesn't want to feel better, because if I feel better, then I have to do the things.
Yeah,
And in that moment, I'm too depressed to do the things.
right.
So there's a sense of like, then I have to take responsibility if
Yeah.
I'm not suffering. Oh, damn it. I didn't want to end up there.
That's not why I got into this business.
That's not why I got into this episode. I didn't think I was going to end up there.
Oh, no, I hear
But
you.
it's also, it can sound really harsh as well, depending on whether it's paired with compassion and understanding, to go, oh, I don't want to take responsibility. That's why I'm suffering. Like that was, I think, where the little judgment piped
Mm,
in when I said it, and just wondered if anyone else might hear it that way, and experience that as like a type of judgment. Because when we're in pain, we imagine, surely I'd do anything not to be in pain, but not the
not
stuff,
not to be
not the
not
boring stuff anyway, not the like
not the
general self-care
responsibility
stuff.
part.
No.
If I have to be
But apart from
responsible.
that,
Yeah.
anything, anything that I already want to do, I am willing to do.
Oh my gosh, it's so true. But I mean, I think the self responsibility aversion isn't really because it's about self responsibility. It's about, I think that when it's interesting because as you're talking about it, I'm like, yeah, it was the depression more. It was the eating disorder gave the depression a name in my
Yeah,
experience.
right.
Because I'm like, well, why didn't I just go for the depression then? Like, why didn't I just keep that going? Why did I just throw in an eating disorder? It's like, oh, because that gave it a place.
Hmm.
Um, but but self-responsibility to me at that time was also to me like like a rejection of all the self-responsibility that I had had too early. The ways in which I felt not taken care of. I resented to have to take care of myself more. I resented that I would have to be responsible for myself because I felt like that I hadn't had been, this is weird, but like I hadn't been like a child enough. I hadn't received enough to
Hmm.
feel like that responsibility should be mine. And
Hmm.
for a long, long time too, I wanted my really what amounts to my mom to save me. And it wasn't really my mom. It was like this maternalism. Like
Yes.
I was waiting always for the cavalry to come. Always. It wasn't until I turned 40 that I was like, it's freaking not coming. And I knew it and I got it. But up until then, I resented that it wasn't coming. And I was always still kind of waiting for it to come. And
Yes.
I don't think that that was because I'm an entitled little brat. I think that that's because I have attachment wounds
Hmm.
and that there was a sense of like not having a closed loop of some kind of security that I was always still waiting for. And the eating disorder put me in a little bit of a like a waiting room for that. It paused my life in many ways. It froze it I kind of got frozen in adolescence in many ways there. And I think that I was just waiting and waiting to finish that until I realized I was gonna be 40 and was like, oh, you're no, that's not happening. But to be honest with you, that still sometimes I still feel this way. I still feel like if I complain loudly enough or if I suffer enough, somebody will notice. And that somebody is like an existential universal thing and like be like, oh, I got you. And I don't think I'm alone here. I hear
Yeah.
this all the time.
Yeah.
Just maybe we don't talk about it.
Oh, I totally relate to that desire for rescue. I just wanted someone stronger, wiser, more caring, more everything than me that just knew what to do. And I went through certainly phase, I'd say maybe the first half of my eating disorder, where I would really get into different people. It was Brooke Castillo for a while,
Yeah.
and like
Yeah.
each person, I was searching for somebody who was going to give me the answers to this. And the minute I resonated with something that someone said, I would kind of grab a hold of that person and be like, right, this is the person who's going to save me until they didn't
Yeah.
save me. And I was like,
Right.
don't
And
like
then you
them
resent
anymore.
them.
Yeah, let's find the
You
next person
promised.
then. Yeah, who's gonna save me? But on the other side, when you talk about the eating disorder giving the depression legitimacy, I remember in that shift between no longer binging but still overeating, it felt like a loss of legitimacy in terms of, well, before I had a binge eating disorder or I had bulimia, like I had a proper eating disorder. So to go from that, I think I was very black and white in my suffering. It was like, unless I can be entirely free of
Yeah.
suffering, then I'm just going to stay right in it and try and figure it
Yes.
out. This middle ground, no man's land, where it's just uncomfortable and some days are hard, maybe some days are kind of okay. Not good enough over here. Thank you.
Yeah. It's not legitimate. Yes.
Yes.
Oh, we've cracked it.
We haven't even gotten to identity yet.
I still feel it too. Like, it's weird. It's weird to have gone through what amounted to up until then my lifetime of essentially suffering and then to move away from it and then to now be in a place where I'm sometimes want it. Like not the eating, not the kind, but I still want it because there's sometimes pathways. Essentially when you move away from suffering, you're creating new neural pathways, right? You're collecting evidence that it's safe to not suffer. And that can be completely liberating. But then I think sometimes the novelty wears off and then you're like, I kind of might, there's pathways in there that I kind of forgot about that I'm a little bit dusting off again. That I'm like, oh, I remember what it was like to be able to suffer and and to hide there almost like, I don't know. I don't know if to me it feels almost like my baseline, and I don't know if that's because it's almost like the way that humans have that, like, do some of us have a baseline of suffering? I mean, there's a psychological theories in that, right? Or is it just more comfortable and safe and familiar because it was my original, like that was my original condition. So to me, recovering or the value you get from overcoming something is that there's choice and that I can understand now that there's more choices than it seems when I want to suffer. Like, because I have wanted to suffer and then I've stayed in that suffering and then I've also not suffered more. And I understand that I can do both. Ugh. So sometimes I choose one and sometimes you choose the other. Not that it's that simplistic, but like that I know there's another way that I know that it's not the only way I can be.
Yes. And helpful probably to draw a distinction between what we mean when we're talking about suffering versus the uncomfortable up and downness of life.
Yeah.
When I'm
Yeah.
talking about suffering, I guess I'm talking about psychological suffering more so than like a physical illness or something like that. Although there is a physiological nature to an
Yeah.
eating disorder, sure.
And it can cause the psychological suffering.
Yeah, yeah. Not saying it can't be adjacent to it or yeah, triggers the psychological suffering, but I guess that a loop of suffering.
Yeah. What's the difference for you?
Well, let's say if one of my cats died, um, I would be distraught and upset, and that would be a type of suffering. I don't think I would stay stuck in it though.
Yeah.
It's not going to remain unchanging for years versus dealing with an eating disorder for a decade, where like it's this constant repeating psychological suffering is different to perhaps something happening in life or events that happen that might cause us distress.
Yeah.
Would I be attached to my grief? Some people do get stuck in grief, right? And they do remain attached to their grief for
Yeah.
all kinds of reasons. And there's an attachment then to that. I don't think, in just knowing myself, that grief is something that I would attach to. I didn't with my mum,
Hmm.
losing my mum. So I
Interesting.
don't think, because I know some people talk about like the feeling of grief keeps them, it keeps that connection, if you like, between the person or animal or whatever it is that they've lost or that's gone now. And I can understand that kind of from like, okay, I can see how absolutely that might feel that way, but I've never felt that myself.
Hmm.
I don't feel like my feelings of grief when my
Touch
mum
this
died
part. Interesting.
made any difference to like my
Yeah.
connection with her. Whereas I know many people when they have that first day where they maybe have some happiness after being in grief. There's sometimes guilt that comes with that. I've never felt that. So there's just not, I don't think
Yeah, I
there's an
get that.
attachment
I get
for
that.
me.
It's so you can't pick. You can't
Mm.
decide how this works for you, but it's so interesting. I was thinking when you were talking about this, do I know the difference between suffering and day to day or like life ups and downs, i.e., the downs, I guess? I either completely know it or I can't tell the difference. Because when you know suffering, it's like, well, everything else, it's like lows are just lows. Lows are like nothing compared to what suffering is. But at the same time, I have noticed that when I slightly suffer, it's almost like my body remembers what that path is and then it wants to go deep into it. It's like, oh, it's just like a muscle memory of what that's like. Almost like when my body, like when I get sick and you know how when you get sick, your energy goes down and you're like, blah. Well, whenever that happens to me, I become depressed. And I think that it's because there's some association between lower energy and like, oh, this is depression. You know what I mean? And then
Yeah.
like, it becomes it. Like, and I do like, I mean, I think there's also more to it than that, but there's almost like this link of any kind of lowering can bring me really low because lowering has an association with a certain place. But it's almost like a neural thing, not necessarily a choice or even an identity or anything like that, but more like does your body remember something so well or has it needed something for so long? Or is it so familiar that your system itself is kind of almost in charge of that? It's leading you to, it's the way that like when you start to have a panic attack, this feeling of the panic attack itself creates more panic, right? Like even
Hmm.
you end up panicking about panicking. So is there a wiring we have for it after a while?
Yeah, I think, well, the brain's always trying to anticipate, right? Thinking about, so funny, you going at the nervous system. I'm like, and the brain, this is what the brain's doing. Let me tell you about the brain.
It's all connected.
That the brain is anticipating, always trying to predict what's going to happen next, and obviously uses the past to do that a lot. So this morning, as you know, I sometimes have energy crashes. I woke up this morning, I hadn't slept well, and I felt the tiredness and the heaviness in my body. And I went and I sat on the sofa to meditate, and the cats were being distracting, and I didn't feel like I got into a meditation. I didn't meditate properly. The intention was there, and I was kind of, and that's fine, but I didn't feel any restoration from the going to meditate. And I'm sitting there on the sofa with this sense of like, "Oh, I need to write and record a YouTube video this morning," and a sense of that inertia and malaise kind of creeping in with the tiredness. And it felt like a fork in the road where I could have just
Yeah.
gone, meh, I'm collapsing. Let's just put Netflix on. And that to me is a type of suffering, sounds like a big word, but I know I won't feel great for it later. There's certain intentional ways of resting that's different. And I just, yeah, there's that going into the malaise where it would feel like I just feel so low and all of that, or taking the other path, which is to get up, have a shower. And I sort of took the pressure off a bit, as in I thought, watching Netflix right now it's not going to work out well. You are going to choose that path, have a shower, do some planning around the YouTube video, and then just see how you feel. in that moment, if I'd said, no, you have to do the YouTube video
Right.
today, it's got to be done today, blah, 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 I might have just, in my muscle memory gone, my rebel would have come out at that
Yeah.
point because it's not feeling like it's even been heard, that actually
Yes.
I'm tired here and I'm trying to make you listen. When I do that kind of the soft negotiation with myself, like, let's just get some movement. And if the energy doesn't move with that, we'll stop, we'll slow. And so I think, as I told you earlier, I did the script, I've done the slides, I've done the sort of legwork of the YouTube video, but I wasn't in the mood to record. So I sat at the table there and I did some puzzles whilst batting away the cats who kept
Mhm.
trying to take the puzzle pieces. And I was listening to some Caroline Miss. Do you know Caroline Miss?
No.
Listening to her on YouTube. She's a spiritual teacher. And it felt really nice and it felt restorative and it felt like I was giving myself a proper break before coming in to record with you.
Well, you gave yourself a gray area,
Mm-hmm.
and you also gave yourself presence in the fork, because I think in the fork it's easy to go the path of least resistance. And so I think there's a certain amount of like, where am I right now? And like that's needed there. And probably that if you've practiced that enough times, you also have another bit of a carved path to be able to do that. Whereas if we always go one way, we don't even have a map for the other way. And I think it's almost physically impossible almost. It's not impossible, but psychologically then. But that pressure part, like it's bringing up this feeling of, if I choose even the gray area, then I have to be that person. Then I have to set up an expectation for myself that now I have to be that kind of a person. The pressure of being somebody who does things, or who chooses the heart, or who moves upstream, rather than with the grain, is energy. It takes energy. And so there's like a pressure of, well, if I do it now, I might have to do it again. And I don't have the kind of energy for that. So there's something about staying present in the moment. And there's also something about giving yourself permission to not always do that, or to do a little bit of it or something like that. But it almost is like I'd rather just stay in the suck, because it's harder to come out of it and then go back to it. It's harder to disappoint myself if I'd make a different choice the next time. That's how I used to think. I don't want to not binge right now, or whatever. Or I don't want to choose to put my clothes on and show up despite the fact that I don't like my body, because I don't think I can sustain that over time. I don't think I can do it the next time. And if I can't do it the next time, then I'm regressing. Then I'm losing something. And that it felt easier for me to just be like, I'm just going to suck all the time. Like, not disappoint myself.
Yeah, I don't think that's been my experience, but I find that really interesting. I think part of it has been I would have a fixed idea of what the way out of suffering should look like. And if it doesn't look like the way I think it should, then I'm just going to stay in it. So the way
Huh.
out of suffering would be this morning, we're using suffering a bit, it's a bit of a strong word here,
Yeah.
but like this morning, the way out, previously black and white thinking, Sarah, it would be, well, you get up and you do the YouTube video and you get everything done and you get it edited and blah, blah, blah. Sort of that would be it. I don't want to half-ass anything. So it wouldn't even be about like making progress this time and then next time not making that choice and feeling like I'd gone backwards. It would be like it's not good enough to just plan the video and not record it. I might as well just surrender to this pull to collapse.
Why don't I have that?
I don't know, babe.
Like, I don't have a perfectionism in that area. Is that
Mm.
what that is? Like a perfectionism?
Yeah, well, all or nothing thinking is kind of perfectionism. Yes, it's a type of perfectionism. It's not. There's perfectionism. There's perfectionism because I can do a half-assed job at certain
Yeah,
things.
me, and
That doesn't.
I can go both ways. Are you think you're more conscientious? You
No,
conscientious person? See?
just because this word came up recently, and I heard actually the definition of it being about getting yourself to do things that you don't want to do and being able to delay gratification. And I'm like, no, that's not my tendency.
Yeah.
And it was one of the reasons why I thought I wasn't recovering and why I worried I wouldn't be able to recover was because I felt like I wasn't conscientious enough, which meant I wasn't consistent enough.
See, I grew up conscientious. I'm less conscientious now, because now I'm like, I don't need to do things perfectly, because screw that. Like,
Mhm.
it's just like my rebel say, I think maybe might come in handy there. But for me, it's more like I don't want to not be able to. I don't want to not have the energy to do, because I don't, well, maybe, I don't know. It's like to have the energy to do something a little bit.
Your conditioning, if you like. So your early pattern was one of conscientiousness. And part of what you needed was to find your voice, to find like your no, to find your sort of pushback against that. I would say mine's more the other way around. I would say like mine more, whether it's natural, whether nature, nurture, whatever it is to be much less conscientious. I've had to use this kind of gentle negotiation with myself to be able to be a little bit
Mm.
conscientious at times if we're using conscientious to mean doing things we don't necessarily want to do and we're not getting an immediate reward for.
Oh, I was thinking more about using conscientious like a perfect, like the idea that there's a right way to do it.
Oh, right. I was just thinking of it as just doing it.
Oh, oh no, I think they're different because I'll just do it, but I don't think there's a right way to do it. Anyway, in the weeds. Um, looking at the questions. Okay. What is this feeling or fear or unsettledness about not suffering anymore? I guess maybe that's what I was talking about. Like if I don't suffer, then I have a lot of expectation and pressure on me. And or who is that person? Who is that person that doesn't suffer? Is that something we have to conceptualize before we can do it?
Well, can I start with what do you make of the quote that's often said, pain is inevitable, suffering is optional?
I like it.
Yeah. Okay. So then if suffering is optional, I think one, it comes back to there's a personal, I don't even want to use the word responsibility. For me, it's like willingness. For as long as we think life or things should be different, we're going to suffer.
Yeah.
So we could think of suffering as resistance to what is. What
Hmm.
is might be painful, it might be uncomfortable, but the resistance is the suffering.
Yes. Yes. So here's where I run with that. Like, I am on board with that. And that phrase comes to mind sometimes when I'm in my suffering place. And again, we're using this word. What's a different word? I mean, I don't know. When I'm like ruminating about something and I'm basically suffering psychologically for something, it's not because it's not because I won't accept it. I just don't literally know what else to do with that. Like, I don't know how to not think
Mm-hmm.
over and over about the thing. I don't know what that person, who that version of me is sometimes. Like, I mean, I do a little bit now, but like, and you know what? That's, I think, why somatic stuff is appealing to me because it's not about what you're thinking instead. It's about coming into your, it's like, I'm just here. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just here. I just need to be here. Like, rather than figuring out some kind of other way. I'm so used to thinking about things or like worrying about things or having anxiety about things. It's a state. You know what I mean? And so I don't know how to not be in that state sometimes. I don't actually know what it is to not be anxious. I think that was really a lot of it. So to not be anxious felt wrong and foreign. And I had to learn through somatic therapy very slowly what ease felt like and what it was like to find that okay. Like, what is it like to be quieter in my mind and not be problem solving? What? You know what I mean? Like, what is that? What is this you speak of? I don't even know. So I had to practice it and
Mm-hmm.
I still have to practice it.
And I think as human beings, we probably always will. Personally, I'm not saying this is a truth for anybody else. I personally see it as being able to
Yeah.
trust in life, trust in higher power, if that's your thing with it. I think this is why so many people have kind of spiritual practices and beliefs because it's that letting capacity to let go. And you know how when we've talked about just an eating disorder recovery, that sometimes there's a moment of readiness where you're ready to let go, and you can be really suffering and know that you need to let go and still not be ready. And so that readiness, it's like this almost feels like the question here of what you're
Hmm.
saying is like, how do you even find that readiness? And then when we're talking about something like anxiety, it's like, how much is this a biological, outside of our control thing anyway? And
Hmm.
what does it mean then to have non resistance to anxiety? Can you be very anxious and not psychologically suffering? Can you be physically anxious and not? Again, it's like, what's accessible, what's possible?
Yeah.
I would find that hard to comment on in any further depth as someone who hasn't really experienced that kind of anxiety.
Well, I can give a personal story of something recent that happened to me that maybe helps clarify it or helps me anyway clarify it. So, for the past, how old am I? I'm 46. So, for the past 6 years, like, found relative less suffering, like, you know what I mean? Much, 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 much. And then about a year ago, maybe more, maybe it's like a year and a half ago, I started to feel more and more anxious again. And it started to center around work stuff. And that became the new object of my anxiety. And it was getting more and more and more. And now, like, as I look back, I'm like, I don't know if that was the beginning of a hormonal shift too, because there's been hormonal changes. I'm noticing my hair is thinning. I'm getting sometimes like these breakup, like just things. I'm like, maybe it's perimenopause having some kind of chemical influence on this anxiety that I have all the time. Like, I have anxiety anyway, but it ramped. It started to gear up again. And all this stuff that I learned from eating disorder recovery about suffering, about the difference, about hope, about choice, about presence was not it wasn't cutting it. It wasn't it I know this stuff and I don't even know how to practice it, but I couldn't find it. I couldn't access. It was like there was a stronger force to the point where about a month and a half ago, well, my therapist was like, I think you have ADHD. I don't know. I don't know. But like, I'm not interested in the diagnosis, but the way my brain was working, she's like, you can't, your thoughts are like ridiculous. Like they're, I shouldn't say that, but like, it's kind of like your
Your
thoughts are
thoughts are
ridiculous.
ridiculous. Yeah, cheers.
Like not that the thought, the content, but the amount and the way
Yes.
that no, I can't sift through them. And so I went on a medication that addressed that. And also simultaneously addresses depression, which is weird because I didn't identify with that as much. And all of a sudden, I had access to all that stuff that I learned. Like all of a sudden I could incorporate it. I could use it. I was like, right, suffering is this. This is how we be present instead of the ruminating. Like it was not easy. It's not like it just happened. I had to work for it, but I could work for it. I had access to the capacity to do it. And now I feel different. It's just kind of like, I think that sometimes, at least for me, it feels like my system has a natural inclination to dysregulate that I think it's just there. And that then I have so much control over like maneuvering that. And then sometimes if it just gets a little out of hand, it's glitching and I have no control at that point. And I have to kind of bring that glitch into some regulation. And then I'm like, okay, got this now. And now I can be back in this wheelhouse. So I think there's a part of it that's physiological potentially. And then there's a part of it that's behavioral or cognitive or, whatever like our influence is. Maybe that's nature nurtured stuff too. Like, I don't think it's all just mindset. I think there is a physiology to it, as made evident by a medication that almost like reset. And it's like, oh, right. Now I can do this. Now these things make sense again.
And was that from just taking it once?
No, I took the medication for about a month.
Oh, okay. Oh, I didn't know. Why didn't you
And
tell
not
me
say
about what
I put it on
medication you
my
were
full but
taking?
not finished podcast. Yeah, you're right. I just didn't announce it anywhere else. But I was
You
lowering
didn't
and
have to
lower.
announce it anywhere.
Yeah.
You could
Well,
just.
you're right. You're right. But I did say it. I didn't put it like on Instagram. I didn't talk about it, I guess, there. But I was finding myself getting more and more burnt out. And it was to a point where I was like, something's going on for me in a way that I feel like I don't have control over something. There's something here that I usually can harness that I can't. And I was like, I need meds. I just need to go back on meds. And I did. But it was a different one than I've ever been on. And this one addresses the dopamine. And so it changed. I was like, oh, I have a dopamine problem. So yeah, it's been different.
And then stopping the medication?
I'm in the middle of trying to we're working with it. We're working with it. I'm trying to work out like dosaging and even type.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So it sounded like you'd taken it and then you
Yes.
stopped taking it and it reset something, but
So that is
had
what happened.
remained afterwards.
But
But
it's
not.
too soon to tell. I am off of it at the moment as we're trying to figure out a different one.
Mhm.
But I have maintained an okayness. So anyway, but having gone off of it, I don't feel like I kind of feel like almost like recalibrated, but it's also too soon to tell.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Yeah. Interesting.
How'd we get here?
I don't know. How did we get here? Um, where are we at with this?
Yeah.
So, how would we distinguish between honoring past pain and being psychologically attached to it? Because it sounds like, oh, well, if we don't have to suffer, then we should just figure out how to be okay with painful, difficult things, unjust things that happen in the world. So, how do we distinguish between honoring pain and becoming psychologically attached to it in a way that then becomes, um, we then become our own oppressors and harming ourselves more?
This is hard because I think there's too much to it. Like, okay, number one is like under this question's assumption is that suffering is in some way an honoring of past pain. Would you say?
Honoring is is a word that I don't know if I would.
Recognizing,
Yeah, but
vocalizing.
yeah. We're
Here's,
replaying. If we're talking
oh,
about
yeah.
where the psychological, if we're assuming that the thing's not happening now for the sake of this conversation, we're repeating it. We're reliving. I guess there's something unresolved because we're in
Yeah,
resistance to something that happened, and there's no morality in that about whether we should or shouldn't be. We're just in resistance to it, and maybe we would want to stay in resistance to it because it might be,
right.
a value thing. We replay it then, and we
Yes.
psychologically suffer.
Okay, so I think we have to talk about how much of that's under our control or not. So I think even replacing the word honoring with resolving. So sometimes suffering is the quest to resolve something older that's not resolved. But does suffering continuously actually resolve it? And can you resolve it? I don't know that you always can resolve it in the way we think about that word. And is it bringing attention to something that still does need attention or that just has the reverberations of that and like is echoing that sort of almost like a record glitch, you know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
that's not really actually doing anything. I have a client who is currently in a relationship with somebody who she does not want to be in a relationship with at all. It's a very toxic relationship. But she's like, I can't leave him because leaving him feels like a betrayal of myself to be okay. There's a connection here between her needing to sort of prove that she's not okay based on childhood things that have happened to her that never kind of got acknowledged. And it's like suffering has become, in her own admission, like a way of validating something's wrong, something's wrong, something's wrong, even though what really was the something wrong that needed attention happened 40 years ago. What is happening now is not that, but it's still playing out that way. So the attachment to using suffering as a voice or as a flag that somebody's waving to say, I need help, can that now encroach on our present in a way that is, it's the attachment, but it's not necessarily honoring or resolving the past. You know what I mean? But it feels like it is. And it's like the attachment is almost the thing that's trying to do that honoring and resolving, but it isn't.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's kind of like separating. And I think this is much harder than it's like easy to talk about and logically be like, oh, I see that pattern. Here's what's happening. Here's what's, this is not logical. It's a very different thing than the experience of it. That's like, to me, this feels the same. To me, this feels like my eating disorder, my body image issues, my relationship, like me staying in my suffering is a voice for something that needed a voice before. And now it's like attached to it and it's become it. And how you separate that is the work of like that's a great question. That is what therapy's for. Like that's what I think all of this work is aiming to do, is to sort of undo this attachment to something that is very meaningful, that's trying to resolve something. I think that's why that present moment stuff is important. It's like seeing what patterns are playing out now that are really before, and slowly being able to like wrap our nervous systems around that, because I think there's a reluctance to untangle those things, because it feels like letting go of a crusade, or of a need.
Yeah. Well, I'm on day 322 of A Course in Miracles, 323 maybe. And the whole premise of A Course in Miracles is that our freedom lies in forgiveness.
Mm.
And it's a really interesting concept, and it's a tricky one because it's very clear it's not setting this moral imperative that you should forgive and you're wrong if you don't forgive. There's no wrong here. You're not wrong for not forgiving. You don't have to forgive. But it's saying freedom lies in forgiveness. If you want freedom, that's kind of what it's going to take against things like childhood wounds and whatever. This, I think, is something that's so personal to me because I don't want to be this spokesperson out there going, everybody needs to forgive. This is how you become free. All I can do is talk from my own experience, which, of course, you know a bit about, like last summer now. I had a huge breakthrough with my dad, which involved a complete shift in my perspective from decades of like um, pain and hurt and what because abuse is too strong a word because I wouldn't say that my child was abusive, but he was angry and he did things that were, you know, um, left their mark on me. Let's put it that way. And so for me, it was about getting to that place of willingness where I had to be willing for a different perspective, but I couldn't force it. So, A Course in Miracles as well is like, when you say like how much of this is within our control, really it's the willingness to forgive. And then we hand it over because, of course, it's a spiritual text. So the idea is we don't have to do it on our own. Our only side of it is to be willing to forgive.
Mm, I don't know.
I know you wouldn't like it, and that's okay.
Oh, you
And that's
did?
okay. That's why I'm not. Yeah, of course I knew you wouldn't like it. That's why do you think I was
How?
fumbling my way through it in the way that I
Oh.
did? That wasn't just for the benefit of the listener. That was for
Oh,
you,
I thought
babe.
it was for the benefit of the listener.
Well, the benefit of the listener as well, but you are my only listener in this moment.
Huh. Well, the only reason that well, first of all, I feel like it makes absolute sense for you and for many people. It's like one of these things where it's like it's going to make all the sense and potentially the only sense for some people. And then in other situations, it could feel like gaslighting. You know what I mean? Where like almost like the agency is the antidote rather than the forgiveness. Or maybe you need agency to get to forgiveness, or maybe it has nothing to do. Because I'm thinking of my own situation. I don't have a forgiveness problem that I can see. I don't think there's anyone to forgive, or maybe you see it. I don't know.
As long as there's judgment, there's still forgiveness required,
But judgment
according to the
about
course.
what?
Anything. We don't need to go down this path. We're going to end up somewhere else.
I know.
And I'm not out here saying I think people should forgive. I'm just saying this is what the course said.
Yeah.
It's helped me. I think it's an interesting prospect. I understand exactly what you're saying. Like, I agree with everything that you're saying. Like, of
Yeah.
course. But I guess it really comes down to, I think, because the Course in Miracle, yeah, it uses the word God. So we're certainly talking about like a higher power or consciousness. We're not doing it on our own.
Yeah.
So it's not even like a full personal responsibility thing here. And
Mm,
so we need to have like our perspective shifted. So I would say for me in that moment, and I think I said this probably to you at the time, is it was like I could physically feel like my nervous system had been rewired.
I know.
And that's an extra to me that was a miracle. It's Course in Miracles, and that was a miracle.
It's a
And that is the
miracle.
miracle. I can't sit here and say whether it's beneficial for anyone else or everyone else
Yeah.
should do it or anything like that. I can only speak from my own experience.
It's an interesting thing, like forgiveness versus agency. It's just like an interesting concept I would like to flesh out more.
Well, the forgiveness is normally realizing that there's nothing actually to forgive. It's not about I forgive you for doing the wrong thing. It's realizing no one
Huh.
does anything wrong. It gets very meta because this world's just an illusion anyway. But we do.
We
But no
always
spoilers.
bring
No
it back.
spoilers.
You can count on us. Before we did this, I was like, let's try a light episode.
Yes, we did, didn't we? We were like, let's do something mainstream and fun.
Extremely appealing
Yeah.
to the non-existentialites.
Do we have any
I don't know.
non-existentialites
That's
that have stuck
probably
with
our
us this
brand
far?
anyway. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
At the end of the day, I think it is so human to get attached to our suffering. And even if it is us, our attachment that causes the suffering, it's so easy. I think, certainly for me in the past, not so much now, but I could fall into self judgment and frustration with myself for that. Because I'm like, if I could just let everything go, then I would just never
Mm.
suffer. But we're human beings. And for as long as you're a human being with an ego and a will, we're probably going to suffer.
Yeah. I will also say though, I think this cohort of people identify with that, but like I have a lot of friends who are the opposite. They don't identify with their suffering and don't want to and don't you like it's the opposite sort of phenomenon.
No, I don't
Um,
believe him.
well, that's
I just
why
think they
that
haven't
I
cooked.
agree. And I feel like it's toxic positivity. I'm like, I don't think so. You're better.
Avoidance,
And then I'm like, is that my
suppression.
own judgment and bias towards suffering?
I know, of
Like, you know
course,
what I mean?
yeah.
Like anything else is fake.
It's like, yeah, human beings might be the most complex, but I know you better than you know you.
Yeah. Safer to suffer, my friends.
Yeah. Anyway, what was
Just
that I was
kidding.
saying about humility?
Yeah, right.
But
But
yeah,
anyway,
but mhm. Anyway.
join us next time for a different episode.
Yeah.